I'm sure the statute of limitations have passed. We'll pay you a case an hour if you want to take it.
Okay, can't beat that.
I was going to buy their beer anyhow.
Right.
I love it. I also want to bring up another quote that I thought was interesting from Timothy for our listeners. So you said if you would have a perfect meal, you would do In-N-Out cheeseburger, McDonald's fries, and then you would go to Sonic and get a cherry limeade.
I love that.
No, this is not
the perfect meal. For our listeners, we might have to get y'all to try it.
All right.
Not if it was. Like, that was a COVID thing for me. Like, when we had time to kill, there was a place that near us that was like just down the road. Double from In-N-Out, fries from McDonald's, cherry limeade from Sonic.
That's amazing. Okay. Wow, guys, we are at the Arizona ABA conference, Beyond the Science. We are live here.
We here.
Yeah, we had a nice little journey, even though we had a couple of bags lost yesterday through Delta. So happy to be here. And we're really excited for the first guest that we have here for the conference. Timothy Yeager is here from Centria. And we really appreciate him coming on here. He has an incredible story. Starting from California Central Valley and now leading clinical innovation at one of the nation's top ABA providers. So I guess I want to get started, and if you can just share a little bit about your journey and kind of what sparked your interest in ABA.
Well, thanks, and thanks for having me here. I actually was a struggling undergraduate student. It took me 10 years to get my bachelor's degree, multiple changes of masters, and it wasn't until honestly, I started to get my own help to figure out like what was going on with my life, how I could like feel more fulfilled, more joy in my life. And that's when I came in contact with psychology and some work with some therapists. And it was at that point in my life where I'm like, I'm gonna go back to school and have a purpose of helping kids, like find their voice. I struggled in my childhood and I didn't have that professional that like saw me and could help me go through some of the struggles that I was going through. And so when I went back to school to become a school psychologist at the time, I took an ABA course as an undergraduate, and that was the moment my life changed. I was a mathematics degree minor, so I had this analytical, logical approach, and then here was a science to helping human behavior that was much different than like the abnormal psychology classes that I was taking. Mm-hmm. So I fell in love with the science first, and then, a couple of years later, fell in love with the practice of it and where they married together. It really didn't become a career for me though until graduate school. I worked at a school called the Fred S. Keller School. For anyone that reads any verbal behavior research, the Fred S. Keller School has been like a hotbed of research for the last 40 years under Dr. Douglas Greer. That was just a transformative experience. I worked there for 5 years. It was a place where, our science, when you have clearly defined outcomes, clearly defined and like trained interventions that align with the science to achieve those outcomes, in a training environment that supports people to do those things to achieve those outcomes, it can be a magical thing. And I worked at a school in Yonkers, New York, and it was just the most powerful thing for me. And my whole career since then has been trying to recreate those experiences for as many clients as I can, as for many like employees that I can, which led me to Centria here. The opportunity to have an impact across thousands of kids and thousands of staff and hundreds of BCBAs across 13 states is just a really, really powerful opportunity.
And I want to touch on something really quick. You said it took you 10 years to get your bachelor's. And I think that's an amazing story, because to get to the level that you have gotten to, I think that sometimes there's a crazy emphasis put on education, which is important, but I feel like the innovation is kind of taken away sometimes. So can you just touch on that a little bit as far as, getting a bachelor's for 10 years and what that process was kind of like?
Really great question. I'm not a person that can I know sometimes in our science we'll talk like rule governed people, right? Like I'm just not a person that's like, go to school, get your degree, and then figure it out, right? Like it has to be aligned to purpose. And so I had a variety of different degrees. I had I was going to be a math teacher at one point. I was going to go into business and like information systems. I went to computer science and took programming courses. there's a variety of different degree choices that I had. Those all, I think, just added tools to my tool belt, right? Like it added experiences, whether career-wise, as a math teacher, going to math teacher, I was a lot in schools. I also was a high school basketball coach.
Nice.
And so like that adds like leadership, management, feedback, hard conversations, goal setting, right? Like, and so all of these experiences, while like I can't like hide away from the fact that I was also feeling shame through this time of like how long it took me and like embarrassed by it. But like when I look back, those are just all part of the journey that like added to who I am today, right? As behavior analysts, we are the summation of our experiences, right? And those all add to who we are. And so, while at the time I was embarrassed, I think now I'm really proud of just that journey and what I've learned from it.
So I'm hearing words like purpose, passion, compassion. I hear your empathy. I love former teachers, high school basketball coaches. I was one. So what are some key principles or practices that you've implemented to ensure that same purpose, that same empathy, that same passion remains progressive and is impactful for individuals with autism?
It's very evident when you first start as a technician, you're working directly with the client, you see immediate change, right? And that like just connects. Like my purpose and my calling is around giving a voice to the people that don't have a voice and trying to support people, because part of my background, which for another podcast, is that like I just didn't have a voice in certain times of my life, and I didn't have a professional who saw me. And so, well, at that time when I was trying to figure out my purpose, I never even knew what autism was. It's come to be, this is the population that I want to help. But when you're a technician, giving a voice to the voiceless is very like, I'm doing man training, I'm doing TAC training, right? Like that is actually what I'm actually doing, right? And so it's very evident. The more you get removed from that, the harder it is to connect. And there are periods of like ratio strain for me in every time I've had a promotion in a job of how do I align what I'm doing today to that purpose, right? And it's a tough period when you go through those. Like it's great. So you go to become a technician, you go to a BCBA, awesome. I have the ability to like, instead of helping one, I'm helping like 8 to 12, right? Like that's fantastic, right? But you're removed. You're not seen. You might be seen that once every week or twice a week, right? And so like, how do you set up the contingencies to be able to see that progress, measure that progress, be really reflective in that progress? Because being a BCBA in that situation is hard. You got a lot of work doing. You're getting pulled in a lot of different directions. And like, it's easy to, in any job, just be like, here's the next fire I need to put out. Here's the next thing I need to do. Here's the next goal. I don't know. When I think about the life of the journey as a life, to me, it's, you always got to be looking out the front window of the car, the windshield, but you always got to make time to look at the rearview mirror, right? And so, yes, I want this child to achieve this goal as a BCBA, but like, let's just take a step back and look at the progress. That's helped me. Moving that to chief clinical officer, though, like now I have thousands of clients. And it was, I would say, a 6 to year long journey for me of like limited reinforcement to try to figure out how to put myself in contact with like what I'm doing in this remote office connects to like my purpose and that's a difficult transition for anyone when you're going up.
And I like to speak to that just because as a business owner, it is difficult because I love working with the kids directly, from our days of just coaching basketball, middle school basketball. I just love that. I kind of dislike portions, that ratio strain, that limited reinforcement of not really being able to access and tap into. And that's hard.
100%.
So I want to ask you, as a CEO myself, the level that you've gotten to is amazing. As far as company culture and then culture nuances. What advice and perspective would you give in regards to that?
Culture is an interesting one that I travel around the country and visit all of our centers. And what's interesting is there's a set of values that I think resonate across all the places that we go, that we've worked really hard to instill. But cultures are different across everyone.
Yes.
And yet everyone's at that local level, that's what their perception of like what Centria is, right?
Yes.
This is a journey that I've been on, which is leadership is much more around supporting people to solve the problems that they're closest to versus like dictating what people need to do, right? And so to set up like in my mind, culture, it's around setting up like what are the goals everyone wants to achieve, and then developing leaders and empowering leaders to achieve those goals through like supporting their people and leading their people.
Yeah, and I wanna hop in really fast here. I told you off here I was listening to an interview you did a while ago, and I just want to read this quote to our listeners. It's from you. You said, "The best thing I can do as a leader is to listen to your people and empower people closest to the problem to solve the problem."
Yeah.
As we kind of talk about what we're doing as leaders, when I heard that quote, I was like, that's what we're trying to do right now. And that's what we're trying to do even with this podcast right now as leaders. So I just wanted to give you a quick shout out because, just those words for me were meaningful. I don't even know if it you remember saying that, but it's a big thing.
That is one of my driving principles as a leader, is that like, I can't solve your problems. And honestly, I don't even know what the problems are that someone in upstate Michigan are dealing with, or our centers in Atlanta, Georgia, right? Like that they do. And I'm going to trust them and empower them to solve those problems.
Yes.
So I want to ask you, what would you say makes a great leader?
I think it's a mix of two things: vulnerability and delivering value, right? So nobody wants a leader, because for the most part, we're all trying to figure out life. We're all trying to figure out this work, job. Like no one really has it together, right? Nobody wants a leader that acts as if like they know it all, they got it all together, just do exactly what I say. But on the flip side, nobody wants a leader that's like, I'm struggling, I'm clueless, and I don't know what to do, right? Like, can you give me some grace, right? Like, I'm going to give you grace, but you got to show up, right? Yeah. And so, yes, be vulnerable, develop a relationship, but then also deliver value in that, like, show up, be present, say what you're going to say, do what you're going to do, add something to their repertoire, their life, their support, be a mentor. One of the transformative things for me as a leader, and I still struggle with, is inherently I'm a people pleaser and I don't like to ruffle feathers, is a book called Radical Candor. My first job out of grad school, I took over a center and I was as close to a dictator as you could be. My whole job as a leader at that point, what I thought was just to create a bunch of mini-me's, right? Just like do exactly what I say, do what I do. If you do that, everything will be great. We got results, but I burned through a bunch of people and it eventually imploded, right? It didn't go well. I went to the flip side of that, which said, man, I was just a jerk. No one liked me. Let me just be a pushover leader, right? And just be like not holding people accountable, not willing to have those conversations, but everybody liked me as the good guy, right? That's not how you drive results, and that's not how you lead. Now I'm trying to sit in this sweet spot of like, I care for my people. They know that I care for them. I'm going to work hard to care for them, but I'm also going to speak directly to the problems and like, let's work through those difficult conversations.
Yes. And I think that's something that a lot of, I don't like to use the term bosses, but managers deal with, is trying to be compassionate. But then sometimes when you're too nice, people take advantage of it, and trying to figure out that balance where we're getting work done and I'm not pushing people away, but I'm being stern. So I really personally, and I'm sure these guys can agree too, I really appreciate that insight as far as being a leader and kind of keeping that stuff in control.
Yeah. We thrived under that, right? Like, I don't know, I played football, basketball, baseball growing up, and like some of the most meaningful relationships that I've had were with coaches who called me out on my stuff, right? I knew they cared. I knew that I wasn't achieving the goals that we had. They called me out, we worked through it, and we overcame. And to me, I think relationship, overcoming things together is a very powerful thing to build relationship. Yep.
All right. So we typically have a segment called Coops Off the Clock. All right. So I'm going to throw this to Coop. Timothy, like you just never know. All right. So, I'm gonna let him take over.
All right, cool. So for this off the clock segment, we're gonna keep it real simple. We heard that you were a beer revolutionary. Yeah. All right. Now I'm a Yingling guy. Yeah. The good Heineken with the game. I want to hear a little bit about this beer revolutionary background.
Yeah. So I think, man, you're taking me back. This is probably 2003, 2004. I was just drinking whatever was free, right?
Being honest, okay. Honest.
And or cheap, right? And so, probably Coors Light, Bud Light.
You ever had a Colt 45?
Colt 45 for sure.
Okay, there we go.
Natural Light, like whatever was cheapest, right? And then I had this beer from Firestone Walker, which is a brewery in Central California. It's called Pale 31. 31, California's the 31st state. It was like a California pale ale. And I still remember that taste and just like, this is unlike anything that I've ever had before. I can like sit and chill and drink this. I can like go mow the yard and drink this after that. Like, this is a good beer. And so I started drinking those beers. And then one day I was getting my oil changed and a car drove up and it was like, just like covered in Firestone Walker. Like, it was like a Scion. It was like old box Scions. And it was like covered in Firestone Walker stickers. And the salesman walked out and I'm like, dude, your beer changed my life. And so I talked to him about his beers and like what I do now. They like go find their beers. And he's like, man, we got a job for you if you ever want to work in this job. And I'm like, well, I'm an undergrad. I'm going back to school. I think it's fast. It's probably 2008, probably around this time. I'm going back to school. And he's like, well, just like work beer events for us. Like go to events, pour people beer, talk about your passion of beer, lead this craft beer revolution. And he's like, and also like, I'm sure the statute of limitations have passed. We'll pay you a case an hour if you want to taste an hour.
Okay, can't beat that.
I was going to buy their beer anyhow.
Right.
Cool. That was a good one. I did hear about that second one as well. So I want to shift gears here back to Centria. Yeah. I've heard about a lot of amazing things Centria is doing. I have obviously some friends and colleagues who just speak volumes about the work that you guys are doing. If you could speak about, just we're in Arizona, why Centria is out here, the need to be out here, and just any advancements, a two-part question. And after that, any advancements in ABA right now that you're most excited about, and how do you envision Centria Healthcare continuing to lead in this field?
Well, one of our pillars of quality ABA is getting access to those who don't have access. We started in Detroit. Our largest payer relation is with our Detroit Wayne Medicaid population. We have, as an organization, made it a purpose and a value of ours that we are going to go into every state where access is struggling. Arizona is one of those states, and that's why we're here. There's a significant need for access to ABA therapy and high quality ABA therapy. There's the state of Arizona needs about 5 times the amount of BCBAs that exist now at minimum, right? And that's a nationwide problem. If you think about it, I think it was in 2022. This is a stat that I think is going to throw people. In 2022, is around 1.8 million individuals diagnosed with autism. If you think about 70% of those needing ABA services, that's around 200 to 250,000 BCBAs that are needed to meet that demand. And we're around 54,000 in the country, right? In the country. And so you think about the need that's present. And so for us, it's around how do we provide access, but then also how do we invest in the infrastructure to develop more BCBAs in the state of Arizona? And so we hired 8 directors who are they're practicum directors. They are supervising, supporting up to 80 grad students right now to become BCBAs here, right? So it's about giving access by providing services, but it's also how do we create infrastructure to continue to grow access?
Yeah, absolutely.
We're still in the infancy of a field. And if you ask, if you go into the conference hall and you ask 10 people what ABA therapy is and what the goals of ABA therapy are, you're going to get 10 different answers. How do you prepare a workforce for that, right? How do you measure effectiveness off of that, right? How do you, as a family looking for services, how do you know what you're going to and what the goals are of that, right? It's as if you go to a fast food restaurant and you don't know what the menu is. You just pull up and you're I just need food, right? So the thing that excites me the most, and it's not as sexy as some topics, which is we need to define a set of goals of what is ABA therapy and what are we trying to accomplish. And we've spent a lot of time at Centria trying to build out our framework of this is how we measure success. And this is what you can expect when you come to our
I
organization.
love that. I love that. We're live here from Arizona with Timothy Yeager, Beyond the Science, here with my fantastic co-hosts, Joe and Coop. As we wrap down here, I know we have a few minutes left. Before we get to the final, I also want to bring up another quote that I thought was interesting from Timothy for our listeners. So you said if you would have a perfect meal, you would do In-N-Out cheeseburger, McDonald's fries, and then you would go to Sonic and get a cherry limeade.
I love that.
No, this is not
the perfect meal. For our listeners, we might have to get y'all to try it.
All right.
not if it was like that was a COVID thing for me. Like when we had time to kill, there was a place that near us that was like just down the road. Double from In-N-Out, fries from McDonald's, cherry limeade from Sonic. And
So I just want to ask a quick question. Going through that COVID era and then recovering as we got out of it.
oh man. Oh, so here's my journey. I was offered VP of Clinical Quality at Centria in January of 2020. I was set to sell our house, quit our jobs, and move my family from Fresno to Detroit in February of 2020. I quit my job. My wife quit her job. We packed up our house, and then we got a call saying, we don't know what's happening. We don't know if you're going to have a job. We don't think you should move here yet.
After you quit your job.
After I quit our jobs.
Wow.
After our house was packed up. So we drove the moving truck to a storage unit, moved in with my in-laws,
Ooh, okay.
which I love and adore them, but that's just not what you want to do as a grown man.
Right.
And then about 6 months later, I moved to Detroit. They thought the pandemic would be over in July of 2020 is what my
Thought.
And so I moved there, and we lived outside of Detroit for a good year, but I managed my team remotely. Right. So like, why did I move from California to Michigan to manage my team remotely? It was an interesting time. Like I was walking around an office built for 700 people, and it was just like me and 4 other people, just like, I was just picking different desks to sit at every single day. It was an interesting time for us. I'll talk more about personal. Moving across the country, I have young kids, no system of support, no friends. It was a trying time. I think as an organization, it created conditions for us to be more flexible, more nimble, more adaptable. One of the benefits that came from it as an organization perspective is prior to COVID, everyone had to move to Detroit and work out of our headquarters. And now I'm fortunate to have high quality leaders that live in Key West, Florida, live in, Oregon, California, Virginia, Nevada. And so like it allowed me to open up a talent pool to like really hire some great leaders. And then as a service model, it forced us to like adapt and figure out how could we still deliver impact through a difficult time.
So do you ever run into the issue, right? Because I have an ABA company, from the COVID vibe of everything was telehealth to now getting BCBAs to actually go back in the home and work.
Yeah, this is a tough time for us around like flexible work, right? Like I tend to err on being too candid, so I may make a mistake here, but like I think BCBAs are best when they're like present and
I agree.
Seeing services. And I think the role of a BCBA in a center specifically is equally a leader as it is a clinical supervisor of a client.
Yes.
But like there's also times and things where like you got to like buckle down and do work. And so if there's opportunities for us to create flexible space for them to write their assessments at certain times or make certain phone calls they need to make, like I'm for that. But like balancing we talked about how much demand there are for BCBAs and how little there are BCBRs. We are not in a work environment to where we can set like certain criteria.
Right.
That's rough. That's rough. It's a balance. It's a balance. Yeah, wow. We really appreciate you taking time. I have a 2-part question for you. Number one is, where can people find out more about Centria? Are you guys hiring? And then on a more serious note, what one message that you would leave to our listeners about balancing personal passion and professional excellence?
CentriaHealthcare.com. We're on all the social media platforms as well as our website. I speak often on these topics on LinkedIn as well. So if people want to follow me there, then they can. Man, personal. So here's a concept that I think that is a hard one for people to learn. It's easy in practice. We learn about shaping quite a bit as behavior analysts. And we think about shaping, whether it's basic studies of like how to teach a pigeon to do something, right? Or like how to like slice up a curriculum to teach a certain goal. But in reality, the goals that we have personally or professionally are never going to be achieved tomorrow. And we have to understand like what our goals are and how are we going to get there, and be okay with that journey taking a lot longer than we're comfortable with. I think for me, there's always this internal pressure to do more, be better, be great, and to escape the discomfort of not being that. And so in every moment you have a path to choose, which is like, am I going to make actions or decisions toward actions that align to my values and the goals that I have, or I'm going to escape this discomfort and choose to scroll on the internet, choose to eat food that I shouldn't be eating or stuff that I shouldn't be doing. Right? Yeah. And so like, to me, it's like set your goals, set a path, and be okay with the plans that you have being held somewhat loosely, and just understand that every decision you're making is getting you a little bit closer.
And how do you balance that out lastly?
Yeah.
With being a husband and a father?
Oh, man. I'm still a work in progress. One thing that you have to understand is being a husband and as a father, and the actions that I have and the decisions I make impact more than just me, right? Like if you had asked me 20 years ago, one day you're gonna have a job where you can travel, you're in planes all the time, different hotels in different cities, I'd been like, that sounds incredible. That's work. And it is like, and it's impactful on my family. And so like trying to figure out, I have to have my wife, Tiffany, she's also a BCBA, and she has to be supportive. And like, I talk a lot about this with our center directors and my vice presidents, is that you can set a goal that you want to achieve, but are you willing to commit to the actions needed to achieve that goal, right? Like, so we can talk about quality, like I believe in quality ABA, but like, are you actually willing to do the work to say that you believe in quality ABA? And it's the same thing with your family, right? So I can have a professional goal, but am I and my family willing to align to what it takes to get to that goal? And for me, being a father and a husband is much more important than my work. And so if they're not aligned to that, we got to figure out how to do it differently.
Wow. I love that. Giving us some gems here as well. Inside the science and beyond the science. Well, guys, definitely check out Centria. We want to thank Timothy for giving us some time at the conference. Really appreciate it. I want to give a shout out to Adrienne Bradley for connecting us and all the work that she's doing. So definitely check them out, and we really appreciate you taking time. And we'll obviously put everything in the links to Centria and to Tech Timothy. So thank you for joining our show, and we hope to stay in touch.